another mother. So I would ask that you join me in a moment of silence just to honor our brother Wali. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. Propaganda wars. Propaganda wars. Let me first define propaganda. Propaganda is defined as the systematic propagation of ideas designed to persuade its intended audience to think and behave in a certain way. That's very important for us to understand as we lay the groundwork for what we have to say, and we won't be up here very long. Propaganda is designed to control the way you, first of all, think, and second of all, the way that you behave. For we know that if you control the diameter of a man's thinking, you also control the circumference of his activities. So when we talk about propaganda wars, we're talking about something that is purely psychological, purely mental. And in order for us to deal on the level that we got to deal with, in order to fight the war, we have to know that. So it takes a strong mind if you're going to survive this war on propaganda. Now, what is a war? A war is an active conflict between two entities. And the objective is for one entity to impose its will on the other. So we've defined propaganda, and we've defined what a war is. So in essence, it is the propagandist's job to get you wrapped up in their propaganda, and ultimately they want to impose their will on us. When I say us, I'm talking about black people. I'm talking about the original people. Now, in every war, follow me, there is a war that you see, and there is a war that you don't see. The war that you don't see is always more powerful and more critical than the one that you do see. For the war that you don't see always precedes the war that you do see. You cannot have one without the other. So propaganda is not something that they're just going to readily show you. 9 times out of 10, it will be covert. But what we want to talk about today is how it is we can decode some of the information that's given to us so that we can recognize propaganda when we see it, or like they say in the streets, recognize game when it's in your face. Everybody all right? Yeah. Now, if you fail to see this as a war, you have already lost. If you fail to see it as a war, you have already lost. The term propaganda was first institutionalized not by the media, but by the Catholic Church. It was Pope Gregory who instituted in the Vatican a college of propaganda. And what they did is they taught the priests how it is they could go out and get large numbers of people to accept the idea of the church. And it was very critical for their keeping a stronghold over the masses of the people and keeping power over the masses, because folk had started to revolt. They had started saying things like, hey, we want to read the Bible for ourselves. The Catholic Church was saying things and folks were like, hey, can you prove that? So what they had to do is develop a system by which they taught the priests to go out and convince large numbers of people to believe in a set of ideas. Now, the term propaganda was later adopted by a scientist known to be the father of propaganda. His name is Mr. Edward Bernays, white boy, look him up. But he helped to master this process of mass manipulation, social engineering, perception management, and manufactured consent. It was around 1915 that governments first systematically beginning use to use mass media propaganda techniques around 1915. That's when they started using the media to put a lot of propaganda out there. Now, around that same time was the time when the Federal Reserve Bank was created. Things that make you go, It was also around that time that the ADL was created. Things that make you go, So understand, brothers and sisters, that when we talk about a war against propaganda, if you and I as a people don't take up this war, then we won't ever have freedom. We won't ever have justice. We won't ever have equality if we are not willing to take up the war against propaganda. And understand that just as oxygen is absolutely necessary for you and I to breathe, propaganda is absolutely necessary for white supremacy and racism to survive. You cannot have white supremacy without propaganda. Why is that, Brother Deric? When they can no longer fool you, they can no longer rule you. When they can no longer trick you, they can no longer trash you. When they can no longer deceive you, they can no longer degrade you. And when they can no longer hoodwink you, they can no longer outthink you. So we gotta engage in this war against propaganda. Now, I wanna do a little exercise. Everybody all right? Yes, sir. I wanna do a little exercise. I knew I wasn't gonna stay behind that podium for long. I want you, when I give you the command, to close your eyes. And I'm going to throw out a word. And I want you to monitor very closely the picture that comes up in your mind when I throw out this word. Okay? Now, on the count of three, I want you to close your eyes. 1, 2, 3. Close your eyes. Welfare queen. Now open your eyes. If you saw a picture of a young black female pushing a stroller with a baby on her hip, with dyed colored weave in her head, standing at the bus stop waiting on public transportation, you have been propagandified. Because 40% of the people who receive food stamps in America are white. Only 25% are black. So if you saw a young sister in your mind when I said the word welfare queen, you have indeed gotten got it. Now, we're going to do it again. Close your eyes. Crackhead. Now open your eyes. Now, can I get the next slide? This is who you should have saw when we said welfare queen. Let's get a welfare queen a round of applause. Now when I said crackhead, if you had a picture of Pookie from New Jack City in your mind, you've been propagandified. If you had your Aunt Betty or your Uncle James that you knew at some point had a drug problem, if that's what popped up in your mind, if that is the image that was first to come to your brain when I said the word crackhead, then you've been propagandified. Next slide. Oh, you already got it. Statistics say that 20% of all white people have said that they tried cocaine in their lifetime. Only 10% of black and Latinos have ever even tried cocaine. So if this didn't pop up in your head, you have been victimized by propaganda. Now, close your eyes. Drug dealer. Open your eyes. If you had the picture of a young black male in a hoodie standing on the corner, and like Jay-Z said, standing on the corner, standing on the corner freezing, holding my crack, looking up and down the block, where the hell is the dough at? If that's who you saw in your mind, you have been touched by the blinding touch of Satan. Because when I think about a drug dealer, I think about this guy right here. This is probably the biggest dope dealer in the history of mankind. So when you think about a drug dealer, if you had your little brother in your mind, that means that you bought into the hype. Young black men are not kingpin drug dealers. They do the crimes. We do the time. And if you know anything about